10 forbidden waters that erase human life. They tell you that water is life. That is the first lie you were ever told. Look at a map of the Earth. Is a blue marble a world defined by its oceans? Over 70% of this planet is covered in a substance that your biological makeup is programmed to crave, yet your environment is programmed to weaponize. We are taught from birth that the ocean is a vast resource, a highway for trade, and a cradle for evolution. We are taught that lakes are serene places for recreation, and that rivers are the lifeblood of every great civilization that has ever risen from the dust. But the Shadow Archive contains a different set of records, a darker ledger. There are places on this planetary map where the water has glitched, places where the standard chemical composition of H2O has been corrupted, shifted, and turned into something fundamentally wrong. We're talking about fluids that don't just kill on impact. We're talking about waters that operate on a level of hostility that defies modern biology. There are lakes in the hidden corners of the world that can explode without a single sound, erasing entire villages in a silent breath of carbon. There are rivers with a pH balance, so acidic they can dissolve a human skeletal structure in a matter of hours, leaving nothing but a red slurry behind. There are deep-sea zones where the very laws of physics, buoyancy, and pressure seem to stop working, pulling everything into a crushing, dark void from which light cannot escape. Today, we are performing a forensic audit on the 10 most dangerous water bodies in human history. We are not interested in myths or legends. We are looking at the cold, hard science of these fluids. These are the waters that have claimed thousands of lives and, in many cases, left no remains to be recovered, no bodies to be buried, and no answers for the families left behind. As we count down from 10 to 1, you will notice a pattern. The further we descend into the archive, the more you will realize that our presence on this planet is fragile. By the time we reach the number 1 spot, your perception of the natural world will be permanently altered. You will realize that the water you see in a glass is just a tamed version of a monster that covers most of your world. Number 1 isn't just a dangerous lake. It is a planetary scale ticking bomb, currently active, currently building pressure, and currently waiting for the next shift in the Earth's crust to release its payload. The surface of the water is a mask. It is a shimmering, beautiful lie. To find the truth, we have to look beneath the reflection. We have to look into the shadows. Number 10, Lake Natron, Tanzania. We begin our investigation in the Arusha region of northern Tanzania. Here, in the shadow of the Gregory Rift, lies a body of water that looks as though it was transported directly from a nightmare or another dimension. Lake Natron. From an aerial view, the lake is a staggering, deep crimson. It looks like a massive, open wound on the surface of the African continent. This red hue is caused by halorchia, salt-loving organisms that thrive in environments that would be instantly lethal to almost any other form of life. But the color is only the first warning. Lake Natron is widely considered the most caustic body of water on the face of the Earth. Its chemistry is fundamentally broken. The lake is fed by mineral-rich hot springs, but it has no outlet. It is a terminal lake. Because the water can only escape through evaporation, it leaves behind a concentrated soup of minerals. Specifically, it is saturated with natron, a naturally occurring mix of sodium carbonate decahydrate and sodium bicarbonate. The alkalinity of Lake Natron is what makes it a shadow achievement of natural lethality. The pH level of these waters has been measured as high as 10.5. To put that into perspective, that is nearly the same alkalinity as pure ammonia or liquid bleach. If a human were to submerge their hand in Lake Natron, the caustic soda would begin to strip the oils from the skin instantly, causing severe chemical burns that would peel the flesh from the bone. It is a liquid that rejects the very concept of soft tissue. However, the true horror of Lake Natron is what researchers call the Medusa effect. The lake's surface is often so still and so laden with minerals that it acts as a perfect, unbroken mirror. Birds, bats, and insects, confused by this optical illusion, often fly directly into the water at full speed. They expect to hit air, but they find a caustic grave instead. Once an animal is submerged, the chemistry of the water begins a process that is unique in the natural world. Because of the high concentrations of sodium carbonate and salt, the water doesn't just drown the animal. It begins to calcify the remains. It is a literal process of mummification. The soft tissues, the feathers, and the skin are infused with minerals until they become as hard as stone. Photographers and scientists have found the remains of flamingos, eagles, and swallows washed up on the salt-crusted shores of the lake. They do not look like dead animals. They look like statues carved by macabre artists. They are perfectly preserved, frozen in their final moments of flight or terror, their wings spread, their heads cocked, their bodies turned into calcified monuments. Lake Natron does not follow the laws of decay. It does not recycle life back into the earth to be reused. It traps life. It preserves the kill in a permanent stone shell. It is a place where the water has decided that nothing should ever rot. Everything must remain as a cold, hard witness to the caustic power of the rift. Number 9. Rio Tinto, Spain. Traveling to the Sierra Morena Mountains in the southwest of Spain, we find a river that defies every expectation of what a freshwater system should be. This is the Rio Tinto. It translates to the Red River, and the name is an understatement. The water here is a thick, opaque, deep crimson, resembling flowing blood or molten iron. For over 5,000 years, the Rio Tinto has been at the center of human industry. The Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Moors all dug into the banks of this river, extracting gold, silver, copper, and iron. It was a site of massive human achievement, a source of wealth that fueled empires for millennia. But that achievement came at a cost that is visible in every drop of the river's flow. The Rio Tinto is a 62-mile long chemical nightmare. The chemistry of the Rio Tinto is a result of extreme acid mine drainage. The surrounding earth is rich in sulfide minerals, and as these minerals are exposed to water and air through centuries of mining, they create sulfuric acid. The result is a river with a pH level that averages around 2.0. To understand the danger, you must realize that a pH of 2.0 is the equivalent of the acid found inside a car battery or the gastric acid in your stomach designed to dissolve food. If you were to fall into the Rio Tinto, the water would not just wet your clothes. It would begin to aggressively attack your cellular structure. The acid would cause immediate, deep tissue chemical burns. But the acidity is only half of the threat. The river is a saturated solution of heavy metals. It contains lethal concentrations of iron, copper, manganese, and arsenic. It is a toxic soup that has effectively purged all complex life from its path. There are no fish in the Rio Tinto. There are no plants growing in its waters. Because of this, the Rio Tinto has become one of the most studied bodies of water by NASA and the European Space Agency. They are not studying it for its history, but for its future. The conditions in the Rio Tinto are almost a perfect match for the subsurface environments found on the planet Mars and Jupiter's moon, Europa. It is a dead zone that proves a terrifying reality. Life can survive in the most hostile, wrong environments, but it is not life that we can relate to. Only extremophile aerobic bacteria, known as chemolithotrophs, can survive here by eating the iron and minerals in the water. For a human being, the Rio Tinto is not a river. It is a 62-mile-long, flowing chemical burn. It is a permanent reminder that once we break the fundamental chemistry of a water body, it stays broken, serving as a crimson scar on the landscape of our world. Number 8. The boiling Lake Dominica. In the dense, mountainous interior of the Caribbean island of Dominica, tucked away within the Morne Trois Pitons National Park, lies a geographic anomaly that challenges the very definition of a lake. It is officially known as the Boiling Lake, and it is not a body of water in the traditional sense. It is a flooded fumarole. It is a direct opening in the Earth's crust through which volcanic gases and extreme heat escape, which has subsequently been filled with rainfall and runoff. The lake is roughly 200 feet across, and it is a scene of perpetual, violent chaos. The water at the edges stays at a near constant temperature of 190 degrees Fahrenheit, but the center is in a state of continuous, aggressive boiling. It is a roiling cauldron of grayish-blue water, shrouded in a permanent cloud of thick, sulfurous steam. To walk to the edge of this lake is to step into a zone where the planet's internal fire has met the surface. No human or piece of technology has ever successfully reached the center or measured the exact depth of the boiling lake. The sheer upward pressure of the boiling water and the caustic nature of the gases make it a physical impossibility. The danger here is not merely the risk of falling in. It is the fundamental instability of the entire system. The lake acts as a massive hydrothermal pressure cooker. It is a delicate balance of water weight and subterranean gas pressure. On several occasions, most notably in 1901 and 2004, this balance failed. The lake level dropped by more than 30 feet in a single day, disappearing into the depths of the fumarole, only to suddenly and violently surge back to the surface. When this happens, it is often accompanied by a limnic eruption of toxic volcanic gases. These gases, mostly carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, are heavier than air. They do not drift away. They settle in the basin of the lake, creating a dead zone where oxygen is non-existent. If you're standing on the shore during one of these shifts, the heat is not your only enemy. You would be suffocated by a cloud of invisible gas before you even realize the water level was changing. The boiling lake is a reminder that the crust of our world is thin and fragile. It is a body of water that sits directly on top of a massive magma chamber, and it serves as the only valve keeping that pressure from a catastrophic release. It is a place where the water is not a cradle for life, but a lid on a furnace. Number 7. Jacob's Well, Texas. Nature often hides its most lethal traps behind a mask of serenity. In the Texas Hill Country, near the town of Wimberley, there's a location that looks like a paradise for hikers and swimmers. Jacob's Well is a perennial karstic spring, fed by the Trinity Aquifer. From the surface, it appears to be a stunning, crystal-clear blue hole, about 12 feet in diameter. The water is cool, inviting, and looks perfectly safe. But beneath that calm surface lies a vertical chimney that drops 30 feet before opening into one of the most complex and deadly underwater cave systems in North America. The caves descend over 140 feet into the dark, winding through narrow limestone passages. This is a place that does not kill with acid or boiling temperatures. It kills with the psychological horror of claustrophobia and the physical reality of underwater disorientation. Jacob's Well is known among the global diving community as a diver's cemetery. At least 12 recorded deaths have occurred within these narrow chambers. The danger lies in the composition of the cave floor. The bottom of the chambers is covered in fine, ancient silt. If a diver's fin makes even the slightest contact with the floor, the silt is kicked up instantly. In the confined space of a cave, this creates a complete whiteout or blackout condition. The water goes from crystal clear to zero visibility in seconds. Once the silt is disturbed, the diver is trapped in total darkness. Because the passages are so narrow, it is impossible to turn around without kicking up more silt. Divers become disoriented. They lose their sense of up and down. They cannot find the guide rope or the exit. In this state of panic, the human body begins to consume oxygen at 3 times the normal rate. Most of the victims of Jacob's Well are found in the 3rd or 4th chambers, often wedged into tight crevices just a few feet away from an exit they could not see in the darkness. They die in the dark, struggling against stone walls, while the peaceful, blue water of the surface remains undisturbed. It is a siren's trap that lures you in with the promise of clarity and kills you with the reality of the abyss. Number 6. Lake Karachay, Russia. We now enter a zone where the danger is not natural, but the result of a human achievement that went catastrophically wrong. Lake Karachay is located in the southern Ural Mountains of central Russia. To an unsuspecting hiker, it looks like a normal, small lake. But Lake Karachay is the most polluted place on the planet Earth. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union began using this lake as a storage site for high-level radioactive waste from the Mayak nuclear facility. For decades, billions of curies of liquid waste were pumped directly into the water. The government believed the lake would act as a permanent containment vessel. They were wrong. By the 1990s, the radiation levels at the lake were so high that simply standing on shore for 1 hour would give you a lethal dose of radiation, 600 roentgens, killing you within days. The water itself has been turned into a weapon. It is saturated with strontium, 90, and cesium-137, isotopes that have a half-life of 30 years and stay in the biological system forever. The true disaster struck in 1967. A severe drought caused the lake's water levels to drop, exposing the radioactive sediment at the bottom. The wind picked up this dust and carried it over 900 square miles, irradiating nearly 500,000 people who had no idea the air they were breathing was lethal. Today, the Russian government has mostly filled the lake with hollow concrete blocks to keep the dust down, but the water is still there. It is a radioactive subterranean sea, slowly migrating toward the regional aquifers. It is a place where the water has been corrupted at the atomic level. It doesn't drown you, it unravels your DNA. Number 5, the Blue Hole Dahab. In the Gulf of Aqaba, on the coast of the Red Sea, lies a submarine sinkhole that has earned the nickname the world's most dangerous dive site. The Blue Hole of Dahab is a 120-meter deep vertical hole in the coral reef. It is hauntingly beautiful, but it is a graveyard. It is estimated that over 200 divers have lost their lives here in the last 20 years alone. The primary killer at the Blue Hole is a feature known as the Arch. It is a 26-meter-long tunnel that connects the hole to the open ocean. The ceiling of the arch is 52 meters below the surface. This is the dead zone. When a diver descends to 52 meters, the high pressure causes nitrogen to dissolve into the bloodstream, leading to a condition called nitrogen narcosis. Divers describe it as a feeling of extreme drunkenness or euphoria. You lose your ability to think clearly. You lose your sense of time and depth. Many divers, under the influence of narcosis, believe they're swimming toward the arch to exit, but they become confused by the light reflections and swim deeper into the hole instead. The bottom of the Blue Hole is a haunting sight. It is littered with discarded oxygen tanks, high-end dive computers, and the remains of elite divers who thought their training made them immune to the laws of chemistry. There's a wall of plaques on the nearby shore, a growing list of names and ages of those who went into the blue and never came back. It is a place that proves the ocean does not care about your experience or your equipment. It only cares about the pressure. Number 4, the Drake Passage. We leave the confined traps of lakes and caves and move into the open wilderness of the Southern Ocean. Between the tip of South America's Cape Horn and the South Shetland Islands of Antarctica lies a 500-mile wide stretch of water known as the Drake Passage. In the Shadow Archive, this is recorded as the most violent and unpredictable stretch of ocean on the planet. The danger of the Drake Passage is a result of planetary-scale physics. Because there is no significant landmass at this latitude anywhere on the globe, the Southern Ocean's currents and winds can circulate the entire planet without ever being slowed down by a continent. This creates a bottleneck effect. When these massive volumes of water are squeezed through the narrow gap between South America and Antarctica, the energy is magnified exponentially. The waves in the Drake Passage are legendary and lethal. They are known as rogue waves, often reaching heights of 40 to 50 feet. These are not just walls of water, they are kinetic hammers. A single wave in the Drake Passage can carry enough force to crush the steel hull of a modern research vessel or flip a commercial fishing boat in seconds. The currents here move at speeds that defy navigation, pulling ships toward the jagged, hidden reefs of Cape Horn. Before the construction of the Panama Canal, the Drake Passage was the only gateway between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It was the ultimate test for human achievement in maritime history. But the cost of that achievement was staggering. It is estimated that over 800 ships and thousands of sailors are resting at the bottom of these gray, freezing waters. The temperature of the water is consistently near freezing, meaning that if a sailor is thrown overboard, they have less than 4 minutes of functional life before hypothermia shuts down their heart. It is a place where the ocean is in a permanent state of rage. It is a graveyard of momentum, where the very rotation of the Earth seems to be working against the survival of anything that floats. Even with satellite tracking and massive ice-breaking hulls, the Drake Passage remains the final frontier of maritime terror. Number 3. Lake Kivu, Africa. On the border between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, we find a body of water that is a biological achievement of horror. Lake Kivu is one of the African Great Lakes, but it is fundamentally wrong compared to its neighbors. It is a meromictic lake, meaning its layers of water do not mix. This lack of circulation has allowed the lake to become a massive storage tank for lethal gases. Deep in the bottom layers of Lake Kivu, trapped by the immense pressure of the water above, are 65 billion cubic meters of methane gas and 256 billion cubic meters of carbon dioxide. To put that into perspective, the methane alone is enough to power a modern city for decades. But it isn't a resource, it is a weapon. The danger is a phenomenon known as a limnic eruption or a lake burst. If the lake is disturbed by an underwater landslide, an earthquake, or a volcanic eruption from the nearby Vona Mountains, the pressure balance could fail. If the deep, gas-laden water is pushed toward the surface, the gases will rapidly expand and explode out of the water in a massive, invisible cloud. Over 2 million people live on the shores of Lake Kivu. If the lake burps, a cloud of CO2 and methane would roll over the coastline, instantly displacing all oxygen. Within minutes, millions of people would be suffocated in their sleep. Unlike a flood or a storm, there would be no warning and no escape. The water would look perfectly calm while the air itself turned into poison. Lake Kivu is a planetary scale bomb, held together by nothing but water pressure. It is a reminder that some of the most dangerous achievements of nature are the ones that sit silently, waiting for the ground to shake. Number 2. The Sargasso Sea. In the North Atlantic Ocean, there exists a sea that has no shores. It is defined not by land, but by the 4 massive currents that circle it: the Gulf Stream, the North Atlantic Current, the Canary Current, and the North Atlantic Equatorial Current. This is the Sargasso Sea. It is a vast, calm vortex in the center of the ocean, and it is a graveyard of stillness. The Sargasso Sea is unique because its waters are almost perfectly still, trapped in the center of the rotating currents. Because of this lack of movement, the sea is covered in massive, floating mats of sargassum seaweed. For centuries, these mats have acted as a biological trap. In the age of sail, if a ship accidentally entered the Sargasso, the wind would often vanish entirely. The water would become as smooth as glass, and the thick seaweed would clog the rudders and slow the ships to a crawl. Ships would sit in the Sargasso for months, completely becalmed. The sailors would watch their food rot and their water barrels go dry, while the ocean around them remained hauntingly silent. Because of the high salt content and the lack of nutrients, the water is a deep, unnatural blue, and it is incredibly clear. Sailors reported being able to see their own doom, the wreckage of other ships, resting hundreds of feet below them in the clear water. Explorers have found ghost ships drifting in the Sargasso with their sails still set and their cargo intact, but with no living souls on board. The crew either succumbed to thirst or, driven mad by the heat and the silence, threw themselves into the seaweed-choked depths. It is a sea that kills not through violence or waves, but through the absolute absence of motion. It is the dead center of the Atlantic, a place where the ocean simply stops trying. Number 1. Lake Nyos, Cameroon. We have reached the top of the Shadow Archive. Lake Nyos is a quiet, blue crater lake in northwest Cameroon. It sits in the mouth of an ancient volcano, and for centuries, it was considered a peaceful place. But on the night of August 21st, 1986, Lake Nyos performed a silent act of mass erasure that changed the field of geology forever. The lake had been slowly leaking carbon dioxide from the magma chamber deep beneath its floor into the bottom of the water. Like Lake Kivu, the pressure kept the gas dissolved. But that night, something, perhaps a small rockfall, triggered the flip. A massive pillar of water surged from the bottom, and a cloud of 1.6 million tons of carbon dioxide exploded into the air at 60 miles per hour. The gas cloud was heavier than air. It did not rise into the atmosphere. It hugged the ground like a cold, invisible fog. It flowed down the hillsides and into the villages of Nyos and Cam. As the families slept in their beds, the cloud arrived. It didn't make a sound. It didn't smell like anything. It simply replaced the oxygen. In a single hour, 1,746 human beings and over 3,500 animals died where they stood or slept. When survivors from other areas arrived the next morning, they found a scene of total stillness. There were no marks of violence, no signs of struggle. People looked as if they had simply been turned off. The lake, which had been crystal blue the day before, was now a deep, rusty red. The iron from the bottom had been churned up and oxidized. Today, Lake Nyos is monitored by international teams, but the gas is already building up again. It is the ultimate wrong water body. It is a predator that doesn't need to move to kill. It is a silent eraser, a reminder that the earth beneath our feet is filled with substances that consider our biology an inconvenience. We have traveled from the caustic, stone-turning shores of Lake Natron to the silent, suffocating valleys of Lake Nyos. We have documented the chemistry of the Rio Tinto and the crushing, drunk euphoria of the Blue Hole. What the Shadow Archive reveals is a truth that is often too heavy for the public record to carry. We live on a planet that is fundamentally hostile to our existence. We like to believe that we have achieved mastery over the earth. We build our cities on the coastlines, we dam the rivers for power, and we sail the oceans for profit. But these 10 water bodies prove that our control is an illusion. We're living in the quiet moments between glitches. The water is not a static resource. It is a dynamic, shifting, and often predatory force that follows laws of physics we are only beginning to understand. When we look at the Clarksdorp spheres rotating on their own, or the Antikythera mechanism calculating the stars, we see the achievements of those who came before us. But when we look at Lake Kivu or the Drake Passage, we see the forces that likely ended them. History is not a straight line of progress. It is a cycle of achievement followed by erasure. The waters we have investigated today are the erasers. They are the spots where the grid fails, where the timeline breaks, and where human life is treated as a temporary chemical anomaly. Every year, the pressure in the magmatic chambers beneath the crater lakes rises. Every day, the radioactive silt at the bottom of Karake migrates closer to the world's freshwater supply. The wrong objects of the past tell us where we've been, but the wrong waters of the present tell us where we are going. You came here looking for a list of dangerous places. What you found is a record of our fragility. The Earth is 70% blue, but that blue is not the color of life. It is the color of the deep, the color of the cold, and the color of the shadow. Next time you stand on the shore of a quiet lake or watch the rain hit your window, remember the Shadow Archive. Remember that the surface is a mask. Remember that beneath every reflection is a reality that doesn't need air to breathe and doesn't need a heart to beat. The maps are changing. The grid is failing, and the water is rising. This has been Shadow Achieve. Stay on the grid. Subscribe to witness the next achievement. Before the shadows claim it back.